Hello guys and welcome to my new video, and today we'll do a new video of our series about recaps of previous elections. We already did about 2016, one of the most, if not the most consequential election in the 21st century, okay? And today we're gonna do a recap of the 2020 election, also one of the most competitive ones, even though Biden won the popular vote by more than 7 million votes. The votes in all the states Trump for him to win was Wisconsin. He lost by 20,000, 10,000 in Arizona, and also 10,000 in Georgia, 11,779 if I'm not mistaken. So that's around 20 plus 20 plus 20, which is 40,000 votes. Trump would have won if he only did 20. If he only did get more to 40,000 votes. I'm sorry. So this election was decided primarily because of the pandemic. Okay, as you know, the world closed its borders, closed everything because of all the pandemic, and that really made Trump and put Trump in a much worse position than when he was before. Okay, because Trump was not that bad in terms of the approval rating, in terms of everything. Okay, but then after the pandemic started in March, the economy crashed, the stock market crashed as well, and we need to inject supply, liquidity to the markets, and especially to the economy as a whole, and that drove inflation for Biden in the years next. But this was really the point. The pandemic crashed Trump's presidency, literally, and that's why he was not reelected, okay? Because if that didn't happen, I would say that right now we wouldn't have President Trump because he would not be able to run for a third term, okay? And then in April to May, we started getting the stimulus checks and the emergency economic measures, like we got the Fed putting interest rates at 0.5%. We got people working at home, okay, and that changed a lot the way we view work at home right now that what it was in the past. Right now it's much more uh, generalized, even though many people are leaving it because they don't think people are productive working at home as they are in the office. And we got a lot in terms of political tension between all the lockdowns and whether you agree or not. And that was also a theme for the campaign. Biden said we need more lockdowns, uh, we need more things of that. We need to contain the spread of the virus. And Trump said it's not that necessary. And Republican states were actually the ones that opened it faster and did not have the huge measures of control and of lockdowns as many Democratic states. That's why many people moved from California down to Florida and from New York to Florida, for example, and to Texas, because they'd had a better way of, not a better way, but I'd say a less prohibitive way of being during the pandemic. Okay, and then in July, from July to August, we started getting the mail-in vote. Okay, because that was a record for the first time in many years. We got nation spread mail-in vote across every state. Okay, and especially Pennsylvania was a state that didn't have too much of a mail-in vote in the previous years. Many people voted election day, but this time we got a lot of mail-in vote, and especially for the Democrats. Democrats won mail-in vote in Pennsylvania 80% to 20%, and that was one of the one of the possible things to explain the election, why Trump was well ahead during election night, then Biden had to catch up because we started counting all of the election votes. I'm sorry, mail-in votes. And of course, Biden won the nomination against Bernie Sanders. That was his main opponent, and he won it quite easily. Even though Biden did not win Iowa, Biden did not win New Hampshire, Biden didn't win Vermont, of course, because it's Bernie Sanders' home state. But Biden started winning in South Carolina with a black vote, okay? And then it's like in the primary, you have momentum, and then you win everything. Biden then lost Nevada, but it was able to win many states in the Super Tuesday, including Texas that Bernie Sanders had it almost got, and that was just bad for him. He won Texas. He won even Maine. That was not expected. And Bernie Sanders, of course, won California, but not by the margin he wanted. Okay. And then we got a first presidential debate in September, and Trump nominated another person to the Supreme Court because the Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader died, okay, unfortunately. And then Trump tested positive for COVID-19 in October, and we got the early vote reaching record levels, as I said before. And we got a final debate of course, talking about the economy, economy, economy. And it was not entirely Trump's fault. It was not 100% Trump's fault because Trump was not the one responsible for the pandemic. Okay, and nobody is, to be honest. You can have your own conspirational theories, but according to the data we have, nobody is responsible for that. And we cannot blame a president for that, even though it's his economy, because he is the president and he has to take responsibility, even though it's not directly or indirectly his responsibility. Okay, and then we got also the debates focusing on COVID, especially as well, and how we should take the vaccine process and all of that. Trump said maybe people should not be mandatory to have the vaccine, but Biden said probably yeah, that's the correct thing to do. And also democracy, because democracy. And then we saw on January the 6th what happened as well. So that was really, really sad. November 3rd, we have the election day. Now, this is the very important part, okay? Trump started well ahead in many states. Ohio was not the case. Ohio, Biden started well ahead. Biden was up 30 points at some point when everything was like 50% in. But what happened in Ohio was the inverse of what happened in the Rust Belt. Even though Ohio is the Rust Belt, but we understand Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. So Ohio, we start counting the early votes. That's why, for example, Mahoning County was at some point 20 points to Biden, and now it ended 2 points to Trump. And this was a swing to Trump, by the way, in the working class people. And Biden, even though he had a lot of, I don't know, people were just mad at Trump's administration, Trump did a very great job, to be honest, considering the environment. Okay, you need to consider the pandemic exhaustion, also in terms of the economy that sucks, that really sucks at that time because people were just mad at everything because of all the pandemic and all of that stuff. But Trump did a great job. He only lost Arizona by 10,000, Georgia by 11,000, and Wisconsin by 20,000, and Pennsylvania by 80,000. So you would say this is not a huge margin at all, and we would expect much more from Biden. Look at his Florida margin. This was not expected, and the Miami-Dade dropout and Latinos dropout in general, like in Texas. Trump did much poorly in the suburbs, but he was able to catch Latino voters around Webb County, which is Laredo, and many other places that we didn't think a Republican was able to do it. Also, if you consider Arizona, Maricopa County terribly, and that's why the reason Trump lost Arizona, because of his poorly performance in Maricopa County. It's the biggest county in Arizona, like 60 or 70% of the population comes from right here, and Trump was not able to catch the suburban voters. That happened in Pennsylvania. That happened in Michigan, for example, in places like Oakland County. But Oakland County, at some point, when we were counting the votes in Michigan, this was red because of all the election day vote and early vote differential. Okay, but we have some interesting thing about Oakland. Oakland is not like 56-42% blue in the whole district, in the whole county. I'm sorry. This part here around, I'm not sure about the name, but it's just when you go outside of Detroit, you have many cities here, very beautiful cities, by the way, and those cities are actually like 70-80% Detroit margins for Biden. But here you have much more conservative territory when you go to Genesee and then Saginaw County. Saginaw County is usually one of the bellwether counties, and Biden won it. But look at this, by how close it is. We got some streaks as well that were lost in this election, like Vigo County, Indiana. Look at this. Trump won Vigo County by around 15, and this was a bellwether county until this election. Never. It was not a bellwether county this time. Trump won it by 15. Trump lost the election. Also, Pinellas County, Trump barely lost. This is one of the bellwether counties as well, but it stayed, okay? And in Pennsylvania, which was one of the most surprising states in 2020, Trump was able to do much better than people thought. Why? Because he improved some margins across the working class people around Pittsburgh, not in Allegheny County, but around it. And he was able to still stay with his voters, as still a little bit of a share of the voters in the suburban votes, even though he lost a lot in Chester County. For example, I think 8 points underperformance just in Chester County. But he did better in in Philadelphia. In Philadelphia, Clinton got 84%, if I'm not mistaken. Biden was able to get to 81, so that's actually a great performance by Trump. And he was able to still stay with some portion of the voters, but he did poorly in Bucks, he did poorly in Montgomery, in all of the suburban counties around it. The point is, Biden was not able to do better in Philadelphia, do better with turnout, especially in many places, even though turnout was overwhelmingly up, but that was generalized. It was just not in the Democratic communities, okay? And you would think Biden probably has a lot of enthusiasm on his side because people want change. Even though that is how this is not what the map represented at all. Okay, and then you move, for example, to places like, of course, Biden did much better in places like Colorado, for example. Clinton only won here by 3 or 4. Biden won by 14. In Minnesota as well, Clinton was just slightly ahead of Trump. Biden was able to widen that gap, and even though Tim Walz in 2024 was not able to widen that gap at all. And in places like Virginia, Trump won here by, I'm sorry, Trump lost here by 5, and then Trump lost here by 10. And Virginia was also an interesting thing in 2020 because you saw the suburban shift as well. But for some hours in Virginia in 2020, until like 60% of the vote was in, Trump was actually ahead by a huge margin because we were counting the election day votes and in Republican areas. So there was actually a huge combination for Trump. And this was a point of 2020, a night that some Democratic people, went to bed thinking that Trump had this on the bag, and actually he lost. So this was a very interesting night. Probably we're not going to have that in the near future, I hope. I don't want another pandemic, of course. But this was 2020, an election that shaped the American politics, but that's why we now have President Trump again, and especially an election that was very different from the others because people voted early instead of election day, especially Democrats. And this changed the way people view elections forever because right now we have early voting spread, nation spread, instead of only being for people with excuses. And this is one of the many differences this election made in next elections like 2024 and 2022, and of course 2026 as well. Guys, this was the video. I hope you liked the video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you are new. Don't forget as well to leave your like to the channel to support the channel and reach our goal of 1,000 subscribers by the year end. And I hope to see you tomorrow on another video. Thank you.